Okay. Today, I would like to, Auntie Janice, can you spotlight the panelists, the 3 panelists? Okay. Actually 4 panelists. So now this, you see on the panel is Benjamin and Kyndra. And then you have David Tse. Actually, Dr. David Tse. He's a newly minted PhD, I guess, professor. How do you call yourself? Not professor, but doctor. And then we have Rachel, all the way from Japan. And you are seeing me on there. I'm the facilitator for tonight, for this session. Okay. Now that we have get a chance to hear from the participant, I would like the panelists to introduce themselves. I will ask them a few questions. And for you participant, if you would like to, actually, can you hear me clearly? Tewu said that the audio sounds funny.
You sound like Terminator.
Really?
Yeah.
You sound like Optimus Prime.
Okay, let me turn this off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, you sound really good.
Okay, sorry about that. Technology failure. So, okay, as the panelists introduce themselves, you can type in the chat any question that you would have for them at the end after I open up for question. You can either type the chat personally to me, or you can just type it in the chat to everyone so everyone can see. You have 2 options, okay? Or you can just jump out and ask the question. Either way is fine. It's a coffee talk, so feel free to drink coffee or snacks, whatever.
Now's not really a good time to drink coffee here.
Yeah? Uncle Choon drink coffee anytime and still can go to bed. You can have a soda or something, okay? So, with that in mind, I would like to start with Dr. David Tse. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your field of study, and what you're doing now, or soon to be doing? Okay?
All right,
David.
sounds good. Well, thank you for the introduction. It is 7 a.m. here, so I guess I could be drinking coffee, but I just woke up like 20 minutes ago, so I didn't have time to do that. As Uncle Choon has introduced, my name is David. You don't have to call me doctor. So I just graduated just this past Monday. I received my PhD in biomedical sciences with a concentration in biochemistry and molecular biology. So I'm quite the science head. And right now I'm living in Rochester, Minnesota, where I go to school, which is at the Mayo Clinic. And so my PhD took 5 years. And then before that, I was in New York for 4 years at Houghton College. It's a small Wesleyan college. I really enjoyed that. And right now, I am going to transition to a new job at Illumina Incorporated, which is a DNA sequencing company in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'll be a scientist. So.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I feel kind of weird calling you Dr. David, so I'm so used to David. Okay, David. Actually, one question. When did you leave home? How many years ago?
Yeah, so I left home in 2012, which is the year everyone said the world's going to end. Clearly did not. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, next, I would like Benjamin and Kyndra to talk about same question. Okay, Ben?
Yeah, so hi everyone, you can call me Ben. And I'm currently in New Jersey now. I studied accounting and mathematics, depending on how you refer to it. For graduated 2019 and right before the pandemic hit. So never expected basically never expected that after not working for more than 6 months, I'll be working remotely for a long time. So ever since last month, I've been working remotely. And I'm doing tax for Deloitte. So that's one of the big four accounting firms. So that's what I do. And I left Penang, Malaysia 2015 then for school, and I've been here ever since. But I would visit during the summers.
Okay. Any plans to go to be a doctor, do PhD?
I don't know if one day I'll be a CPA then.
By the way, for those of you that don't know, Benjamin and David, they're actually siblings. So David is the older brother, Benjamin is the younger brother, and then both of them have a youngest sister that just went and joined them in the US. Okay, Kyndra, your turn.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyndra. So I'm Ben's wife. We got married last year during the pandemic, so pretty crazy there. We both live in New Jersey in the US, so we're on like the East Coast, and it's 8 a.m. here-ish right now, like 8:20. And so I graduated the same year as Ben. We graduated in 2019, May 2019, and so we were super fortunate to be able to be in person. I know it's super difficult right now, having the pandemic and like having everything over Zoom, and hoping and praying that things go back a little bit more to normal. I'm currently working for a nonprofit that's near me that helps men recovering from like alcoholism and drug addiction. But I'm actually going to be transitioning into a new job in September with Johnson & Johnson as a project coordinator. So that's an exciting thing that's happening.
Okay, I have a special question for the two of you. How do you guys meet?
So the short story is
coffee.
Yeah. So like my roommates and I, like we opened a coffee shop on our college campus, and I was the scheduler for the volunteer shift, and I made it. I made it to the point where she could work with me. Yeah, but no, I mean it worked out. It made for some reason, like it was the only shift that was available and she could take it. So those are the shifts that we work together.
He didn't do it on purpose so that we could work together, but I mean it worked.
I was like, oh, I get to know her. Why not? You know, she was new on campus.
Kyndra, are you sure he didn't do it on purpose? I don't think you ever know. Okay. How long have you guys been married?
So we'll be a year in October.
Okay.
So
10 months.
Newly minted, huh?
Newly minted.
Okay. Now we'll go to Rachel. So a little bit background about yourself, the field of your study, and what you're doing now.
I'm Malaysian. I don't know what else to say.
Siblings?
I'm the middle child, so I have an older sister and a younger sister. Anything else about my background?
Where do you grow up?
In Malaysia. In Penang, in Penang.
All the time in Penang?
I stayed in Kulim in Kedah for about 10 years. I grew up in Penang. I was born in Penang. No, actually, my mom was pregnant with me in Sarawak, flew back to Penang to deliver me. And then I stayed in Penang. And then my family moved to Kedah for 10 years. And I went back. And I went back to Penang. And then came to Japan. And then I went back to Penang. And I came back to Japan again.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the Japan, Penang, that like what's going on there?
So I first came to Japan 2014, I think. So I was 18 when I first came to Japan, and I came here because I didn't want to study. Well, yeah, don't learn from me.
It's okay to learn from you.
I took a gap year because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I think my dad was just really nice about it. He was like, why don't you go to Japan? You know, and then I think they went there for holiday. And so they were like, Japan is very nice. And at that time, I was like, I like Korea though. But there was no student exchange program to Korea. And I was like, since Japan's so near, I go to Japan. So then I went to Japan. And then now I'm here. Now I'm back. I recently graduated this year in April. And so I was working part-time and I had an internship, and then now I'm gonna start a new job in September. So in September 1st, which is this coming Wednesday. Funny thing, I actually studied business and finance when I'm in university, but now I'm gonna be working as a kindergarten teacher at a Christian school. So it's a really exciting opportunity, and I'll probably talk about it a bit more, like how God led me to that position.
Okay, great. David C wanted me to say that there's nothing wrong with taking a gap year. Right? What about Ben and Kyndra? Do you agree?
I also took a gap year, so there was nothing wrong with it. I feel like it's good to, if you're not sure what you want to do, or like feeling like you need to like stay in the area where you're currently at a little bit more, very good thing. I am very glad that I took a gap year. So
All right. I think is what, nothing wrong with taking a gap year, but it's what you do with that gap year that's important. Right?
Yeah, at least have a
Yeah.
plan. Because if you tell your parents, oh, I want to take a break for 1 year, like, especially like in where we grew up, our culture, or what, it's always like there's a idea where you have to progress, right? You know, in that sense, right? So like to really convince or persuade them, you really have to come up with a plan. Then at least it's not just like I'm gonna sit in the sofa and watch TV all day or play games, right? So you need so of course it will take some time to plan out, but at least because you don't know what to do, right? But do maybe work on the side, or do a project, or do something where you feel like it gives you more time to still let your mind be engaged in. Yeah.
Something productive is always good.
Yeah.
Or like Rachel, you just go to a different place. Right?
I play a lot though. I mean, like, because I stay with a Japanese family, and my host parents really treated me as their own daughter. Like, so, and they didn't have any of their own kids. So they really, really treated me as their kid. And so I was very pampered. I was like fattened. Like, I think I gained like 5 to 6 kilos, and I stayed like only 10 months. So yeah, I was really pampered when I was with them, actually. But for me, it was a really good experience personally, because during that year when I was away from family, away from everyone, and being in like a new culture, in a whole different language. I didn't know Japanese before I came here. So it was actually the year where I felt God's presence for the first time. Like, I felt like God was real, you know. So I think God brought me to Japan, allowed me to take a gap year because he wanted to show himself to me. So that counts for something, even though I played a lot, actually. I ate a lot. And okay, I got to meet God, so that's a good thing.
Great. Okay. Now, Rachel, thank you. It's a good segue into my next question, which I will ask David first. Okay. So the next question is this: can you share a little bit about your faith journey, when and how you committed yourself to follow Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely. So trying to think. So I started going to church when I was 6. There's actually a pretty fun story to it that I kind of want to tell you. So when I was 6, I was in kindergarten. I was in Union School. That's in Penang. It's called Shehe, if you know Mandarin. And so we went to school. I was 6. All I remember was we had this exercise where it was sort of primitive now that I think about it, but they had these little kids, and they were all different races, right? There was a little Malay kid, an Indian kid, Chinese kid, I think there was a white kid, and we were supposed to line them up on which buildings they go to, right? So which places of worship. So it was church, Buddhist temple, Hindu temple, mosque, and then our homework for the day was to go home and ask your parents what religion you are. So I went home, and then I asked my mom, and I don't know why I remember her lying on the bed, and I was like, "Mom, what religion are we?" And she was like, "Christian. Tell your teacher Christian." And I was like, "But we don't go to church." And so my mom said she was convicted, and then the next week, we found the closest church to us, which was Fetish Park Baptist Church, and then we've been there for the last, oh my goodness, the last 21 years. But I wasn't baptized till I was 10. I was baptized by Pastor Prem Kumar, who was the pastor at the time. I think he passed away when I was 11 or 12. What was kind of cool was that I got to get baptized in one of the first years when our new building was renovated. So I grew up at a time when the church building was totally different. It was much smaller back then. It looked more like a traditional chapel. And but I would say since then, my faith has grown a lot, especially since leaving home. There's been challenges of living by myself, especially college is a time when you figure out for yourself, whether you believe what your parents told you when you were kids, what you want to take away, what you want to leave behind. My college too was a Wesleyan college. I went to a Presbyterian church. Right now I attend a Church of Christ. So maybe that doesn't mean a lot to you, but in the US, Christian denominations do matter a lot, unfortunately. And so, everyone thinks they're right. Everyone's like, well, those Baptists were there. So I think for myself, through learning from different Christian traditions, including Catholics as well, I learned more about the Bible, and I learned more about my relationship with God. And I think I've, through the years, distilled my faith to, I think, is what the true message of God is, which is love, compassion, loving the marginalized, loving the persecuted, laying down power and wealth. So yeah.
Thank you, David. So is it fair to say that there's no one point in time, it's a progression of, it started when you were in the when you're 8 years old, right? You said, but it's a progression of your faith from one level to a higher level, right? As you follow.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say the baptism occurred at 10, but really I haven't started growing. I think your faith continues to change, continues to morph, especially when things happen to you, whether it's someone passing or leaving home.
But by my definition, David, you started follow Jesus when you were 8. Just like Jesus went to call the fishermen, he called them up, the first batch of apostle. They have no idea what they were doing. They just follow him, right? Mm-hmm. And as they follow him, they learn more about him. That's what you gone through. So, okay, thank you, David. Now I would like to ask the same question to Ben and then Kyndra.
Okay. So some of you might know Auntie Claudia, right, from church and maybe Awana clubs, right? So I grew up in a Christian household, so actually really cool.
Auntie Claudia is your mom, right?
Yeah, Auntie Claudia is my mom. Just to make sure, right? Sorry, I just assumed, sorry. I guess if it wasn't for David's story, our family won't be going to church, right? And that's a really big thing. But personally, I would say my faith became more personal when I was 12 or 13, then around that age, because I just followed my parents. I just followed them because we had to go to church, right? It's like we have no choice, okay? And the funny story is more personal. It's sometimes, as a kid, I was always confused, going to church, if we're arguing and something is wrong, right? We would argue, but once we get to church, we're like, okay, stop. everything is nice, no one's mad, we come out, we're fine, right? Then as a kid, I always feel so conflicted. I'm like, why are we doing this so much? You know, and it's normal to ask those questions because as kids, we always see some inconsistency, and we're all human, right? That happens. But so I was always like what's going on here? Like, what's the whole point of church? It wasn't a thing. Sunday school was just to answer questions and get the points. You know, I think back in my days, there was coupons and you can exchange gifts for it. Like, I was like, okay, like I'll just answer all the questions and get all the toys, right? Not right. And I would say, I think just through different moments in life where I would like hit rock bottom because I had a bad temper, really bad temper issues growing up. So I think through different crises in my life, God has come to me, you know, and not say convicted me, but really like I can receive peace from Him, and that He is real, that He is not just some person up there, right? Like, so I would say, as much as it's a progression, I would say 10 to 12, that age time, that's when it became like, this, I know who Jesus is, and He's my Lord and Savior, and I want this, you know. It's not just like I'm following my parents then.
Good. So I also grew up in a Christian family. My mom was a believer since very young, and my dad, he grew up Catholic, but not like practicing Catholic, like kind of just Catholic in name. And then I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like Campus Crusade for Christ Crew. It's a like college ministry. He got involved with that and was saved through that ministry. So then he met my mom in college, and yeah. So I grew up in a Christian family. I was the very rebellious kid in Sunday school. I actually got kicked out of Sunday school one time. Funny story.
Is that possible?
Well, I did it. So I didn't like, they used to have these really like low quality like animation videos, and I don't know, I was always like hypercritical of things, and I would always make like comments about how I didn't like the quality of the videos and that they can like do better. And so they actually ended up, so at that time, the like youth students were meeting at a school because the church wasn't big enough to have all the youth meet. So one of the leaders actually had to drive me back to church. It's a kind of funny story there. And then I just sit and wait for my parents, and I got in very big trouble. So that, you know, I grew up Christian, and same with kind of David and Ben, where I got to college and kind of like made my faith my own. You're confronted with a lot of things, and some doubts, I would say too, and you figure out that so many people believe different things, like David was saying about different denominations in the US, and that's very true, that churches will, I don't know why this is the case, but they will separate themselves on like different views, and like they seem like, some of them even seem like trivial, and it's like this really big wall. So it's like, okay, what do I believe? Do I believe this? So it's definitely a time of like figuring out like what you actually believe. And so I'd say my faith journey like kind of came together more in like college, and when I was exposed to different things, and, you know, kind of separated my parents' faith from my own. And not that I believe like different things than they do, but, you know, kind of really take it as my own thing, and like I've explored.
So you own your faith in college,
right?
You basically feel that this is where I really own it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty much it.
Thank you,
now.
Kyndra. Hey, Rachel. So that gap year, right? And your faith, you were saying.
Yeah. So I still remember it was maybe 3 months into being in Japan. Like, I was really depressed and sad because I still couldn't understand the Japanese language. And yeah, like I just didn't really know Japanese. No one spoke English there except like the English teacher in the Japanese school. So it was really hard, and I was crying almost every night, and I really wanted to go home. Actually, I didn't tell my parents this story yet. But anyway, yeah. So one night I was crying, and then for some reason I was playing the song In Christ Alone, and then I just suddenly felt like God's presence. I felt like God was giving me a hug, and that was the first time I experienced him in a very real manner. And so from that, like, I kind of like, okay, I was like, okay, God, you're real. And actually that was basically it. Like I was reading the Bible and everything, but then when I came back to Malaysia, when I went back to Malaysia, I wasn't very serious in my faith. And it was only when I came back here again to Japan. And I remember something happened. I was kind of heartbroken. And then in October 2017, I remember still being in my room and I was on my knees and I was like, okay, you know what? Like, God, you're like the only one who can heal me right now. Like you're like the only one. Like, I feel like you're the answer. Like, I grew up in this like Christian home. So I know, you just hear a lot of people telling you these truths, but then it doesn't become personal for you, or it doesn't become real for you until you've actually experienced it yourself. And so for me, that was in October 2017. And yeah, I actually got baptized again. I don't know if that was possible, but I remember my first time. I don't even remember when.
Yes, you are allowed to baptize however many times God wants you to be baptized.
I remember my first time when I got baptized. I think it was peer pressured. I wasn't sure. But I realized my second time it was real for me. And it was just, yeah, like I was like, Lord, like I really want to be serious. And yeah, so that's when my real journey started. So I was an actual Christian for maybe like 4 years. So pretty young actually. But yeah.
But I think as all you guys heard all of them share, one thing Uncle Choon want to say is that to me, because I asked this question, when did you commit to follow Jesus, right? And to me, they all started following Jesus way back before their faith keep on increasing as they progress day to day. So like for Rachel is this personal encounter twice, right? In Japan that she mentioned. There may be more. David and Ben also shared, and Kyndra shared that how that become really own her own faith in college. So I think we all go through that. I went through the same journey. If you ask me to pinpoint exact what time and am I a follower of Christ, depends on how you define it, right? But I would say I follow is when the first day I started to be listening to things about Jesus. That's when I follow him, right? That's how I define it. So, but thank you everyone for sharing your faith journey. Before I open up to the participant to ask question, I will let her ask one last question, and then you guys can start asking your question. This last question is this: can you share with us one major struggle that you have to face after you left home? Because all this participant here, in a few years, they'll be leaving home, and they'll be facing some struggle. So maybe they can learn from you. One struggle, and how you dealt with it. Who would like to go first? I know David is thinking, maybe not David. Ben, are you ready? Or Kyndra?
I still need to think, sorry.
Not ready?
It's okay, I'll go. I think I can say something.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say that the hardest thing that I struggled with was like, I think this is just to know where your identity is, because it's easy to just not say like fake it till you make it, but like really just put yourself out there in a way where you just fit in, because that's like part of my personality growing up. I'll just try to follow the status quo and not stir the pot. So I'll just if this is what the culture is, I'll try to like align myself so that way I won't be like the weird one, but that's right, because you want to be true to yourself. So I think that's what I've learned, is just to be true to myself. And it's not easy. It's a journey, because sometimes you don't even know who you are yet, right? So I would say that's more like the personal psychological part. But in terms of like the family side, yeah, I miss my family so much, because I grew up in Malaysia like my whole life, and my support system were there, you know. So it's just that was the hardest thing. But at the same time, you learn to branch out and connect with other people, and allow people to, like, you put your walls on and allow people to come to your heart, you know, if you're being willing, right? And there's a risk, right? Because they might not be the best friends you can have, or they might not reciprocate that kindness, right? So it's just growing and learning how to do that. Yeah. And then of course, funny story is, like, I think second year in the US, I actually made myself to, like, I live in New York but not in New York City, so I forced myself to go to Chinatown in New York City to see the lion dance and during Chinese New Year, because I really missed that, and I just cried when I saw that. I was like, wow, like I miss home so much, you know. So that was like a thing that I was like, I have to do that, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I never really left home because I went to college, but I was only an hour away from my college, and I had a car, so I would drive back whenever I wanted to, because it was only an hour drive. But I guess the biggest thing, this is kind of funny, but I miss just having free food. Having my mom like cook, or even like me cook. And so that's, you know, even going to college, like the cafeteria was awful. And I just like missed having like good, healthy home cooked meals. And like, even at home, like a lot of times I would cook, but you know, my mom bought all the ingredients and stuff. So now, you know, being an adult and stuff, I have to buy everything. If I want to make a meal, I have to go out grocery shopping for it. So that's kind of a funny thing.
Maybe you could share about your time going to Taiwan too, right? I guess it was big, or it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, David or Rachel? Okay, David.
Okay, I can go. Yeah, I was thinking like, man, what am I gonna share? I feel like there can be a lot of struggles. I think one thing I would say is like being forced out of your comfort zone. I will say that even as a PhD, I will say that life is still very hard. You know, you're constantly forced out of your comfort zone, like trying to figure out all these things that you've never done before, you know, whether it's interviewing for a new job, applying for a driver's license, figuring out how to move, changing an address to your credit card. Like all these things are very uncomfortable, right? And like what's more comfortable for me is to just stay in school forever, but you know, that's not practical.
You kind of stay in school for
yeah,
quite a long time.
I did. I stayed in school for I guess 9 years, and if you add high school, it's even more. So yeah, so it can be the comfortable thing too. Even though grad school is not easy, I don't just do it because you don't want because you want to stay in school. But yeah, I would say that like courage, praying to God for courage is very important. But also knowing that you have a support system and being humble enough to ask for help is a big thing. I will say that I don't always do that. I really like doing things by myself. Really like all that control. But yeah, people are there to help you. So always be open to ask for help.
Thank you, David. Rachel, one major struggle,
Mine
or
was,
two, or three. Up to you.
well, I had a language thing and a cultural difference. Yeah, I guess for language, sometimes when I don't understand what they're saying, I'm just like, hi. When they realize I don't understand, you're like, okay. It just stops there. But yeah, language differences are hard. But I think for me, the biggest one was cultural differences. And Malaysians are generally loud. And I'm saying that as a good thing. Like Malaysians are just loud and lively, and like you want to get into other people's business. Like it's a very family-like environment. And in Japan, people are very quiet and they're very reserved and they just keep to themselves. So it was really hard for me to fit into the Japanese culture here. Most of my friends are international students, actually. So that one was okay. But then I really, really miss the family setting that, you know, I think all of you have that back home right now, which I don't have. But every time I miss that, I hang out a lot with my Malaysian and Singaporean friends, or like the Singaporean aunties in my church. Yeah, and then every time I go to their house, it's like, yeah, you eat already or not? And I'm like, it's really, yeah, I think just trying to find home away from home in a sense. But sometimes I get used to the Japanese culture here, and then when I go back to Malaysia, I get reverse culture shock, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I'm back in Japan. And it takes me about a week to settle back into Malaysian culture. But yeah, for me, cultural differences are the biggest one. What helped me cope a lot was being in church. I think the best part about the family of God is that there's not much of a cultural difference, if that makes sense. Like everyone believes in the same God and we all have the same faith. And even though we have a bit of cultural differences, we don't stop ourselves from like hanging out with each other. And so, yeah, for me, like finding a like strong, like Christian community really helped me through this. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. Actually, Rachel, you still attend TBC, Tokyo
Yeah,
Baptist Church.
yeah.
Actually, Tokyo Baptist Church, for those of you that may not know, is actually where I came to faith and where Auntie Janice also attended. That's our first church in Tokyo. And actually, a lot of people that Rachel knows actually happen to be our friends. Maybe not the uncle and aunties. Definitely those uncles and aunties. Yeah. Okay. Janice, can you actually unspotlight us so we can see everyone? Because I would like to now open up for question. And I'm not sure about you guys, but the participant, but I am really blessed. And I think I felt that just now their sharing was really good and meaningful, and I can identify with a lot of that. So with that, any question for the panelists? Oh, before, while you guys were thinking about question, I want to introduce our facilitators a little bit. We have 8 sessions. They have different topics, which I think I sent to you guys already. I'm Uncle Choon, and Auntie Janice. Can you wave your? Auntie Janice is my wife. She is also a facilitator. And then the other 2 facilitators are Uncle Suhin and Auntie Rina. Can you wave your hand? Yeah. They are husband and wife. Yeah. Just in case you don't know. So the 4 of us will be facilitating the 8 session. I'm the facilitator this session. The next one I'll do it also, and then after that, each one of us will take turns to do that. Would like to open up for questions. So I see a first question. Christopher asks, any tips for application process for university? I assume, yeah. How do you choose a university, right? Is that the question, Chris? How do you, or how do you get in?
Sure.
Which one? How do you choose?
Both.
Both. Okay. Any of the panelists? How would one choose? How do you know that's the right college for you, and how did you apply? And what was the trick that got you in? Any magic bullet? Okay,
So
Ben.
yeah, I'll speak more on like, because there's different paths, right? If you don't go to college, that's fine till you start working, that's also fine, right? So this is more on like the college side, like, or university. I guess in the US, college and university are interchangeable, but I think in Malaysia, it's like you do college for 2 years, then you do university for the last 2 years, right? So I would say in my case was just narrowing down to what I want to what I want to be in, and David was in New York, so I was like, okay, I want to be in New York then. Then I wanted to be a Christian school, so that really narrowed everything down for me, so that helped. But of course, there's applying for scholarships, applying application process. That's the administrative part, and your grades in your school, like high school or your secondary school, right? That would play a role. Then if there's any entrance exams like SATs, that's also a factor too. But I think a big part of it was applying to different schools over there just to know what they can offer you in terms of scholarship. And because right, like it's expensive and you want this is, of course, everyone's story is different, but I just wanted to like save as much money as I can for my parents. And at the end, it drowned down to like 2 schools, David's college actually, and 1 school that I actually went to. And I think money was one big thing. It doesn't have to be for everyone, but money was a big thing. That was the cheapest option to finish all 4 years. And I think just the program that they have then, because they had the honors program and it was more encompassing. Whereas David's school, it was cool. Like I could go to London, for a semester. Like, but it seems like it was just a 1-2 years program. Whereas what I picked at least was 4 years then. And I think maybe having references like one of the pastors said, "Oh yeah, like that's a good school. It's part of the Christian Ministry Alliance," and I think that really helped. But yeah, I mean that's something that I would say like it's all a factor. Like it's you applying, you have to do your part to apply different schools. Like there's so many schools in the US or even in Malaysia or Singapore, Australia. Like it's just applying there and see what you can get and yeah.
You definitely went to the right university. You met your wife there. If nothing, you earn big already. Okay. Anyone else would like to jump in?
Or maybe wait, one last thing. Sorry, Chris. Like I think you might ask about like your program, right? Like what majors or what? Of course, it's better to know what you want now. But if it takes time for you to figure out, like definitely take more of the prerequisite classes in like what you need to graduate anyways. Then pick a few like major classes. Then it's like, okay, pick a business class or pick a science class or pick something in coding or what, like, so then that way you sometimes you don't know what you want, so you have to just go into it to figure out what you really want then, or what you enjoy or have passion for. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
want to say,
Go ahead, David.
Ben. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Also one thing, I didn't realize that you chose New York because of me, but that's something new. I want to say, I want to be aware that like, I'm glad that Rachel's on the call and on the panel as well, because I'm aware that not everyone, on here is going to the US for college. And so I think Ben and I are and Kyndra as well, can only share sort of a very small slice of what college can look like. I think one thing I want to say is something that I wasn't mature enough to think about was look, and this is hard too, because like, you can only do this online. See if you can contact and learn about the faculty that you want to work under. So like if you want to be an accountant, you want to be a scientist, look at who are the professors that work there. How big is the school? Will you be able to get to know them? Because these are the people that you'll be, hopefully, you'll form a relationship with, and they will be the people that push you to the next step. They may introduce you to what graduate school, they may introduce you to the jobs that you're going to get. So that's also important. And then in terms of picking a major, I think, depending on the school system you're in, if you're in a liberal arts college, yeah, you can take the requisites, but some colleges you need to go right in away, right? Like if it's nursing school, if it's medical school in a non-US setting. So I think to save yourself time and save everyone time, think for yourself, shadow, spend time talking to people. Because the last thing you want to do is get in a program 2-3 years in and realize that, oh no, blood makes me faint.
Yeah. Is that your experience?
No, it was not. But I will say I did shadow a doctor, and I realized like, wow, like, being a doctor is talking to patients all the time, and you're almost like a counselor on top of all the other stuff you do. And I asked the doctor like, how much time do you have outside of that? And he's like, not much. So I realized that maybe I can look into something else. And fortunately for me, I still really love science, so I could do something else other than medicine.
So initially, you think that you were going to be a doctor, medical doctor, but then
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. When I growing up, I was like, I'm gonna be a missionary doctor. I want to be a doctor. And then I was like, nope. I really like doing research as well. So yeah.
Okay, good. So you can change course. Did you change course halfway, or you before you went to university you already knew?
I think I changed after my second year, but honestly, I was taking biology anyway, so
Right.
it really wasn't too big of a deal. But again, if I was in Malaysia, I would probably be in medical school, so I
Right.
wouldn't have that choice. So
Unless you quit medical school.
yeah.
Actually, my dad did that. He started in the law school in University of Malaya, and he quit and he became a teacher. He hated law. Okay, Rachel.
I hate laws too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a bit of law for my A levels and I stopped. But yeah, I don't like law too anyway. For my university, so I actually only applied to this one university. I don't know why, actually. Thinking back, I should have explored more options, but I didn't. So I think don't follow me, like seriously. Yeah, I think it's better to apply to the places that you really want to go. But I think more than that, like what David was saying, like it's good to shadow the people that you want, like the kind of jobs that you want to have in the future, if that's what you're after. If you don't know anyone in your close proximity that are doing what you think you want to do, I recommend going to LinkedIn, because there's a lot of people there, and you may or may not find someone that you actually want to follow, but that is a good place to start. And you could, I'm sure if you pray about it and if God wants you to do it, he'll open the door.
Hey, Rachel, sorry to interrupt you. Can you explain a little bit going to LinkedIn, right? It's a website, right?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is like a professional work social media thing.
Maybe later you type in the chat so they know the spelling.
I think everyone here knows LinkedIn, right?
Do you know?
I can send a link. Give me a sec. Yeah.
Okay, everyone knows. Okay, just want to check.
You just need to type it on the search, like accountant in Penang, and then you'll come up for sure. And then you just gotta type a message like, oh, I think I want to be an accountant. Can I? And I mean, a lot of people may or may not ignore you, but it's good to try if you really want to, because I definitely recommend going into that, because like what I think Uncle Choon was saying, that like if you went in there 2 to 3 years and you figure out that's not what you want to do. However, that being said, I did study business and finance, but then I'm not in that field. And how God led me through that was very interesting. But I was basically begging God to I want to do this. I want to do entrepreneurship, I want to blah, blah, blah. And God really gave me the opportunities to do what I wanted to do. And through those opportunities, I realized I didn't really want to do that. And so God was really gracious. And then I realized I really love kids. And so that's how it all started. But yeah, I mean, even if you feel like you may be making a wrong decision, if you get into college, I wouldn't worry too much personally. As long as you tell God, like, okay, God, maybe I made the wrong decision, but you are God, So, I mean, honestly, yeah. But one thing I would want to say, if that place is for you, if that place is somewhere that God really wants you to be, he will open the way. And that's from my own personal experience. I applied, and this is for a job and a scholarship. but I applied for a job and I think I did really well for the application. But I didn't get it. And I had also a scholarship interview and I did horrible. Like I was just like, and I had to do it in Japanese. Like it was terrible. I couldn't really answer the interviewer in Japanese. He was asking for my thesis in Japanese and I write it in English. Like that's impossible to explain. And so I was just, yeah, I didn't do well in the interview. But God is so much bigger than that. In the end, I got the scholarship, but I didn't get the job. So, I think for me, God was trying to teach me that if that's where he wants me to be, if that's what he wants me to have, then, no matter how good I do at it or no matter how terrible I am at it, I will get it. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. Okay, move on to the next question. A participant asks, did you guys experience racism in Japan or in the US? And how did you deal with that? You really want to ask that question?
I think it's a very good question. And
okay, go ahead,
anyone who
David.
follows my social media, they probably know I talk about it sometimes. I think the way racism can work in the US is through microaggressions. I think through history, countries act like some countries are better than other countries. And unfortunately, even though that happens at a governmental level, it can trickle down to people as well. So there are assumptions that people can make about you and they'll get very surprised, like, oh, you guys have internet. Things that you're just like, why would you even say that? Even my boss sometimes will be like, he'll see a photo from the 1920s, and sees a Chinese guy, who was a doctor in England. And he's like, oh, they wear suits. I thought they would wear like, a robe or something. And I'm just like, you do realize that the world has been so globalized for a long time, right? But yeah, I think it can, usually how it happens, it's very subtle and you don't know. And sometimes it isn't until later that you're like, that came out kind of weird. But I think being able to be equipped with the fact that this is what happens, and a lot of times it comes out of a place of ignorance. I think most of the times people don't really want to hurt you. They just, that's just not how they grew up, and they just don't know the right thing to say. And so realize that it really, most of the time, it's not something that's really personal. And if it is personal, there's always people around you that you can talk to about it and help you work through it. The last thing you want to do is, there's a term called gaslight, which is sort of like lie to yourself or think you're crazy. The last thing I do is gaslight yourself and say that, oh, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Most of the time, I don't think you are. I think that it was not very good, even though it wasn't intentional, but it still matters, I think.
But David, would you say that when you try to understand the other side, why they do act or do the way they did, that helps you deal with it a little?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think for the most part, most of the time, it's never intentional. And I think all of us are victims to a system that we didn't sign up for. We didn't choose to be grown, to have the skin color that we have, right? We didn't choose to be in a country that was colonized by, the British, the Dutch, and all the baggage that comes with that.
Okay, before I go to the US again, maybe I go Japan a little bit. Did you experience racism in Japan?
Not necessarily racism, but there is this foreigner Japanese gap. So that's why I guess all the foreigners are together, because Japanese people hate us kind of thing. But there is a term though. It's very interesting because all foreigners just decided, you know what, we're gonna own it. And there's this term called gaijin, which means a foreigner. And so I don't know, because Japanese people, when they're being not racist, but when they're not being so kind, they're very passive aggressive, so they're not like to your face, right? But they just like look at you and stare at you and like make like this kind of face. And because there are so many unspoken rules in Japan, like for example, you don't eat in the train, or you don't drink water in the train, or when you're eating, you're not supposed to walk and eat at the same time unless it's a festival. So there's just so many unspoken rules in Japan, that it's really hard for a foreigner to like know all of them. And so us foreigners, we have this thing called the gaijin card, where we're just like, oh, we're just gonna play the gaijin card and we're just gonna act like we're gaijins. And like, even though I look Asian and a lot of people assume I'm Japanese, I'm just like, okay, like if you speak to me in Japanese, I speak to you in Japanese. And then, sorry. But then, if you speak to me in English, I speak to you in English. I wouldn't say there's a racism per se, but there's definitely the Japanese foreigner gap.
Right. Okay. Maybe Ben and Kyndra, anything to add? No? Okay. Any other question? Any other question? Okay, if not, actually we have overshot our time, but I think these are very good session. You have plenty of opportunity. We have what I encourage you is to go back to look at the different topics of the sessions, and if you start thinking of questions that you may have, so when we cover them, you can bring them up during those sessions. Again, I want to thank the panelists for really taking their time to make this happen, because we are cutting across time zone, different countries, and they are busy people. Like Rachel could have been out party, right? Saturday night.
It's like sort of state of emergency.
Yeah. So she chose to spend time with you guys. And in the US, it's early. I'm not sure if this is the time. I don't think Kyndra wake up this early, do you, usually? No. So this is suffering for her. Not easy. So I want to thank all of them for making this happen. We have 7 more weeks of this. And if you have any friends that you would like to invite, you think that they'll benefit from these sessions, ask them to join. Okay? Share the Zoom link that I sent to you. Will work again next week. Every week will be the same link. Okay? Same time, same link. Share that with your friends, invite them to join. I think it's beneficial. I mean, I wish I have someone like them coming to show me what to do before I go to college. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Can I ask Auntie Janice to pray for us to close? I'm going to stop. Actually, before we pray, I have recorded the session.